What's up, Internet? Welcome back to Wolf Watches. I am the 84th Wolf, and we are back with the second episode of RWBY Volume 6, Episode 2. Okay, so a lot of stuff happens in this episode. Maybe not a lot of action, but a lot of plot, and they're kind of... I was about to explain, but we'll get to it. I am just very super excited because we're finally going to get some backstory that we've been desperately needing in the next episode. I can feel it. So let's just stop talking about it, get right into the episode. Again, this will have spoilers for episode 2, so if you're watching this instead of the actual episode, I would recommend watching the episode and then watching this. Okay, opening scene. I called it! Cinder is alive! That's right. She did not fall into a bottomless pit because there is no pit that is bottomless. She just landed in one at the bottom and somehow survived. Yes, some people will call it a cop-out. You know what? I don't care. I called that she would live. I thought she would live. Didn't happen the way I thought it would. But she's alive. And good thing too, because while she isn't as interesting a villain as maybe Roman was, there's a saying in story that less is more, and I think that once we finally get into Cinder's backstory eventually, where she came from, how she came this way, I think she'll be a lot more interesting as a character. So she crawls out of the water, punches through this hole to get out of the cave, and she immediately finds a villager who pretty much is just killed off screen, and Cinder steals her clothes. These clothes, by the way, is what the mysterious figure is wearing in the trailers, but now that we know it's Cinder, yeah. So now we kind of have another flashback to Team RWBY, Ranger, I include Ranger, RWBY's really part of whatever. They are all discussing their next move, and they have to get the relic to Atlas. Now, despite the fact that Ironwood pulled out all his troops and closed the borders, there is a slight chance that the shipping port of Argus, which is an Atlas trading post with Mistral, and a major one at that, there is a chance that it is still open and they could hitch a ride to Atlas from there. Weiss, of course, is not pleased with this, but they really don't have much of a choice. And yeah, but they think that they can maybe use her influence to assist them on getting to Atlas. So then Oz enters the room, and they finally say the question that we've been wondering all this time. What does the Relic of Knowledge do? And the power of the Relic of Knowledge is to change sizes from something small to something big and vice versa. Oh, and it will also answer any question you ask it as long as it doesn't pertain to the future, and only 3 questions every 100 years. Now that might not sound super impressive, but it's basically whatever question you have, it will answer. They could find other relics, they could find maidens, they could do anything, and in this world, like, those are very important questions to ask. So, of course, there's a small scene of Nora like, ooh, what should we ask it? Like, basically, what can we ask for more questions, and all this other stuff, and it's funny. However, Oz reveals that all 3 questions had already been asked before they sealed it away. Wink. So then we move on to present time, where Yang is kind of ranting. She's a little upset of the whole situation, and she complains about the old lady that they picked up now that they're stranded in the middle of the snow. The old lady takes offense to this, reveals that her name is Maria. I'm probably gonna still call her Maz. And Maria is, she's funny. Yang mentions that they picked up a weak, defenseless old lady, and she's like, I'm not defenseless, I'm just a little hard of healing, and blind, and my glasses don't work very well. Okay, I see your point. So she's got a little bit of spunk to her, which I actually kind of like. So then the team confronts Osmond and is like, so remember when we said that you shouldn't lie to us, like, ever, and you were going to tell us everything? Why didn't you tell us about the relic attracting Grimm and being more dangerous and stuff like that? And playing devil's advocate, Oz actually has a good explanation. He does say that if they had been unknown to that, like, it would just cause more negativity, attract more Grimm, And to be perfectly honest, I actually can see that from that perspective, but at the same time, it's still kind of like, well, they're being attracted anyway, so you should have probably told us about this. So that conversation kind of rolls into what Ozpin had told Mistral about the whole Lionheart situation, which we remember from last episode, they just said that he died defending his school when that wasn't the case. Oz did this partially to stop the spread of panic, but he also says that one mistake shouldn't negate years of good things. And apparently Lionheart was a very honorable person before Salem had managed to gain control of him. And this quote I think is especially important, which to something we'll get to a little bit later. Oz does admit that while he trusts Team RWBY, he is just uncomfortable with trusting people because he has lived such a long life, and Leo wasn't the first person to betray him. Even Raven wasn't the first person to betray him. He's just scared of what he might share with the team and how that information can get out. So then he realizes that the relic is not on his belt anymore, and RWBY had managed to find it in the snow. Oz asks for the relic, and RWBY is hesitant to give it to him. She mentions that, he's always talked about believing in man and believing in human, and was that also just a lie? And it really hurt her because more than anyone else apart from Crow, she has had the most experience talking to Ozpin. Oz kind of tries to brush this aside, and he wants to hold on to the relic, which the other team is like, well, can RWBY hold on to it? This would be a good way of, showing that you trust us. But again, Oz just reaches for it, but then he freezes, and it turns out that Oscar is fighting Ozpin's control. He manages to access Oz's memory and realize that there's a way to summon a being in the lamp, and its name is, appropriately enough, Jin. So they're basically taking the relic, which I think they did call a lamp before, but it never really clicked in my head. But obviously they're drawing inspiration from Aladdin in this case. And this scene, to me, is also really interesting because we've seen Ozpin take control of Oscar unwillingly during the fight with Hazel in the previous volume. And now this is sort of the opposite, where Oscar is fighting Oz and actually manages to access some memory that he didn't have access to before. Which kind of brings up the question of, what happens when Ozpin and Oscar, when they merge, like what happens to the Oscar identity and what happens to the Ozpin identity. Rooster Teeth does say that both of them merge and it's kind of an equal balance. To me, it's still like what is gained and what is lost by such a merge, because we never even hear about the Ozpin from before he gets possessed by whatever the prior reincarnation of Ozpin was before he became headmaster of Beacon. Now, whether they were in perfect synchronization or one personality kind of overrode the other, just with the memories intact, I don't know, and to me that's an interesting question to ask. So RWBY says the being's name, Jin, and the world just freezes. It's snowing outside and it just freezes. The lamp kind of floats away, hovers for a moment, and then this being it's very beautifully done, but she just comes out of the lamp in this big rush of blue. And the best way that I can really describe her is that she's got kind of an elven face, she's got really long ears, she's mostly nude, with a couple of golden hoops around her, and she actually really looks like the statue from Lionheart's Academy, where he puts the watch into the statue and then the statue lowers like an elevator. She looks really close to that, just slightly more clothes, and I think the ears are different. So then she asks the question, what would you like to know? And then of course we cut to something completely different. So now we turn from RWBY's group to Cinder and her travel through, I guess it's the underbelly of Mistral. There are actually wanted posters for her out there, so she tries to hide her face as much as possible and explores the town. Then she comes across this symbol, which is a spider just sitting in a spider web, and apparently she recognizes this and knows what it means, because then she goes to this cafe where it's run by this kind of underground information broker. So she goes up to the person in charge, who I think is called Little Miss Malachite or Malachite or something along those lines. But obviously she is kind of a play off of Little Miss Muffet. After some slight conversation between the two, Cinder reveals that she is looking for Team Juniper and Team RWBY. Now, what I think she's trying to do is that she realizes she cannot go back to Salem the way she is. She's failed her mission, she failed to capture the relic, and like Dr. Watts said, she changed the plan to basically try to get as much for her as possible, i.e. killing RWBY. So what I think is that she's trying to capture either the relic or capture RWBY to then return to Salem and hopefully gain some of that respect back. So the information broker says, all right, give us a week and we'll see what kind of information we turn up. And so Cinder leaves. Once Cinder leaves, however, one of the bodyguards kind of leans over and says, hey, the big guy was asking about these guys. We know where they are. We sent him on his way. The little miss says, I know that we know that, but we don't know who's looking for her. So obviously she's very comfortable playing both sides of both the law and illegal, which is probably why she can sit in where she is so brazenly and not worry about the authorities. And the big guy, I mean, it's gotta be Hazel, right? It would be interesting if it was something else, if it was someone else like Yasuhashi or something like that. That would be kind of cool, but I think that it's most likely Hazel is still searching for Ozpin and the rest, which does make sense. Whether or not he was ordered to from Cinder or not, he probably is really motivated to hunt down Oz. What I really like about this scene that I don't know is going to carry on from in future volume or even during this season. Malachite mentions that she used to hate spiders, but now she gets the spiders to work for her. And Cinder has this kind of like, because Cinder's immediate thought was, you just kill them. But she realizes, or her expression says, if I can use people to my advantage, that's better. Which I think is developing her as a character. Maybe she'll try to take over the information broker, which would be kind of cool. The trailer does have a fight scene in that restaurant, so it would be cool if she does take it over and then uses it for her own gains. But it also kind of reflects to what Salem has been teaching her. Don't throw away somebody when they could be potentially useful. Whereas Cinder always basically kills first and asks questions later. So now we come back to RWBY's group, and Jin is kind of explaining what she is. It turns out that she was created by the God of Light. So in the story that Crow told Team RWBY back in Volume 4, about the story that Oz told him, at least that was true, which I think is interesting, because I was beginning to doubt how much of Oz's story is true. And yes, it's a legend, but since we know he lives for a very long time and he says that the gods cursed him and stuff like that, it could have been just like some kind of weird magic that went wrong and there are no gods. That would have been a pretty interesting twist, but it turns out he was telling the truth in this case. But then Jin reveals that she still has 2 questions left. So now Team RWBY for sure knows that Oz knew about this, lied about it, because he doesn't trust them. And this whole revelation actually throws Crow in for a loop too. He shakes his head. He can't believe that Oz has hidden this away from him where it could be potentially useful, or just to let them know. The rest of Team RWBY protects RWBY herself by taking out their weapons and making sure that Crow or Oz doesn't charge at them. But even Crow is just like, do whatever you think is right, RWBY, because I think you deserve to know if you believe that you do as well. And this is really good because I would have been a little upset if Crow had tried to fight back. He is very, very, very loyal to Ozpin, but the fact that he realizes that this is a huge issue, he trusts his niece to make the right decision more than Oscar or Ozpin. So then RWBY asks the big question. What does Oz not want them to know? And Oz just freaking bullets towards RWBY trying to stop her, but it's already too late. Each member of RWBY, Crow, and I'm assuming Maz and Oscar are teleported in this white void separately, like they're not together. And Jim begins to tell them the story of what Oz doesn't want to know. And I think Jim separated them in their separate instances so she could answer any single question that they might have and not kind of like go over each other. But anyway, she begins to tell the story, and it's very beautifully done. Like images appear on the horizon like they're standing there, and it's like a mixture of wind and blue magic. It's very, very well done, I have to say. And the first building that appears looks a hell of a lot like Beacon. So she begins her story. Once upon a time, great use of the fairy tale metaphor again, Rooster Teeth. There was a lonely young woman named Salem. What? Huh? Okay, now we're gonna get some freaking background on Salem. And she used to be a human, which I think most of us probably already suspected or knew that, but now it's like definite, and we're gonna find out what the hell happened. Holy shit, oh, where's the next episode? It's in a week for now for free members, and it's out today, which I'm gonna watch right after this video. And Salem is this mysterious girl that we saw in the intro that I didn't mention in my last video because I didn't know what to say. I couldn't get a good look at her, and I didn't know what she represented, so I didn't want to theorize, but dear God, what the hell? And then the episode ends, because of course Rooster Teeth loves their goddamn cliffhangers. So with all that, what can we expect? First thought was Oz somehow created Salem somehow. Either through some experimental magic or some cataclysm, whatever it was his fault. He created Salem. That's what created the Grimm. That's what did this whole horrible thing, and it's all his fault, and we should hate him with everything. But then I had a couple of days, and again, devil's advocate. Apart from blaming himself because of him being directly involved, why would Oz not want to reveal this? And I come up with a few alternative things that wouldn't be his fault if I was writing it. Whether or not they're all true, or because I want this to happen, I literally have no idea. I don't know if this would be good or not, but I just, in my head, it's like, okay, what are all the alternatives to this story? So a couple of things is that she loves Salem, and it was his fault, and he feels guilty about it, and that's why he didn't want to expose it. But then another idea was maybe it was just such a terrible memory for him that he considers that like sacredly private. Because we all have moments in our lives that we don't want people to know. Whether or not it's our fault or it happened because of us, there's always a memory that you don't want to share because that's your memory. It's private. It has nothing to do with anyone else. So instead of Osmond being directly involved in it or causing an accident that had this happen, it was just an event in his life that he just doesn't want to share or doesn't want to relive, because Jin is like, this is real life looking with Jin explaining the story. So there are a couple of alternative things, and I shouldn't jump to conclusions until the next episode. But now I want to talk about a couple of things about the episode in general. With my immediate thought of, Osmond made a huge mistake, and that's what caused Salem to exist and all this stuff, that kind of jumps back to my Lionheart quote. Because Oz says Lionheart shouldn't be judged on this one, it was a major mistake, but it shouldn't negate a lifetime of good and accomplishments. I think Oz wants to believe that because he made a mistake with Salem all those years ago, and he's trying to atone for all this time. And if he believes that you shouldn't be judged at the end of your life, you shouldn't be judged at the beginning of your life either. Unfortunately, he's talking to a group of kids who have, nothing but scorn for him at this point for not telling them anything. It's a hard argument to make in general, especially if it did turn out that he created Salem and the Grimm. I mean, that's not something you can easily walk away from unless you literally fix it. And that's what he's been trying to do for hundreds of years, but he's been doing it for hundreds of years. My next thing is the two remaining questions. Who asked the first one? My immediate thought was, again, Oz, but fun idea entered my head. What if it was Raven? If Raven had the relic, either for safekeeping until it was put in the vault or something similar, what if she asked, what is Osmond hiding, and Jin showed her this vision, or something along those lines? That could have been like what finally convinced Raven this is a fool's errand. Probably unlikely, but I just really like that idea. And finally, I just wanted to end this video with a brilliant tweet that I had to share after this episode came out by, what was it, C-Spot Diner, I think it was, who, after Jin appeared from the lamp, they had to go with a Robin Williams quote, 10,000 years can give you such a crick in the neck. And I thought that was hilarious. So shout out to that person. Okay, so that wraps up every little bit of that episode. I am really excited to see the next one. You know what? I'm going to stop this video right now and go watch it. So I'm going to do that. This is the 84th Wolf, and I'll see you guys next time.